Today's episode is all about Turo as a business.
Turo does provide a valuable service of marketing. They have a platform. Turo is so great because it is low risk. If this really doesn't work out, you can just sell the car,
And when we started, there was no good deals to be had. If I get $8,000 out of this, I think it was like a Ford, those smaller transit vans. They came back with a number of 12,000, typically overswelling with inventory. And that's when I realized we were in a whole different world when it came to vehicles.
You have to have an understanding. Like, I worked at McDonald's. They let us steal nuggets. I was like, how is this not collapsing the business that we're stealing all these nuggets? But they account for that. They have a margin of error. They'll just order an extra bag. And you've got to do that as a host. You're just not going to stay sane if you expect things to go perfectly.
Welcome to the Every Turn Podcast, a place for entrepreneurs to tell their stories, share some of their industry knowledge and secrets, explore their challenges, and yes, of course, their successes found within it all. I'm your host, Chad Chase, and I look forward to sharing this week's episode with all of you, so let's dive right in. Hello, everybody. This is Chad, and you are listening and watching the Every Turn Podcast. I am joined today with Landon Circo. He is a Turo host, and today's episode is all about Turo as a business. So, welcome.
Glad to be here.
This is your first podcast?
That's right.
Awesome. Feeling good?
I'm feeling great. It's good to be here.
Good. So tell me a little bit about your business right now. How many cars do you have? That type of thing.
Yeah, so we rent out cars on Turo. When people need a car, they come to us. And we offer a few economy cars and a few sports cars. Our heart is really in the sports cars. We like to give people something that they might not want to own, but they want to experience. It gives them an option to try out something without having the full commitment to that. We started with a Miata. And that's a pretty impractical car. We've only had it only fits like 2 carry-ons and 2 backpacks. That's just not livable for a lot of people. I mean, some people consider this car a toy. I mean, it's hard to think about somebody. I mean, the average person spends like 10% of their income on a car. They have it as a toy. That's not really something a lot of people can realize. So yeah, we give them an option to try it out.
Yeah, that's, I think, a great way to put kind of Turo in general for some of these exotic, interesting vehicles. As some of you don't know, I'm also a Turo host. I started in 2021. When did you start?
Yes, I started in March of 2021, right after Phoenix ran out of rental cars.
Yeah, I think I might have been in the same boat. And then that kind of brings my next question. And that's all about how you were inspired to even start Turo. For me, I learned an important lesson of if you have extra cash laying around, you probably should stay away from alcohol. But I was sitting at my store, Chadwick's Urban Market over in Scottsdale. One of our longtime customers, amazing person. I always loved sitting down and talking with her. Well, she would pop over and have a charcuterie board and a glass of wine. Well, we were closing and she had popped in late, and I said, "Oh, just hang out. I'll have a glass of wine with you, and we'll, talk about how things have been going." She had started talking to me about the car I just bought, which was a Model X. I felt horrible about it. I just spent $80,000 on this vehicle. And I was pulling up to a stoplight, and there's homeless people, panhandling for money on the side of the road. I just had a really hard time justifying the amount of money that I spent on a vehicle, and there's somebody standing there without a home. And so I was telling her about this, and she said, "Well, why don't you rent it on Turo? I have a friend that's doing it, and he's been doing fairly well." And so that's what I did. I threw it on Turo, didn't see my car for probably 3 months. So I had to buy another one. I put it on Turo, gone for 3 months. I had to buy another one and just kind of snowballed from there. So, that's my Turo beginning story. How did you get started? What inspired you to do it?
So I was a bit more slow to get going. I'd always wanted to try out a Miata and like a few other sports cars. I'm just obsessed with cars. And I saw that you could rent out cars on Turo. This is one of the only places where you can rent out a car with a manual transmission. So I was looking into doing that for a while. And, we moved out here to Phoenix. I finally rented one. And, I'm just looking around at the possibility of the business,
Right. So did you feel like Turo was a gateway to get you into a vehicle that you wanted?
Yes.
But was impractical, so you could rent it out, part-time?
Yeah. Like you were saying, you felt guilty about spending all that money on the Model X. I felt guilty too. Like where I grew up, a lot of people didn't get a sports car until they were retired, and that just seemed like that was too long to wait.
Yeah. I mean, you haven't seen our newest vehicle we bought, but Ooh. I finally bought Anthony a Corvette.
So good.
I felt the same way buying that car. And we'll get into the more details of where we're at in our Turo business. But, it was, we were looking at replacing one of the cars for myself. And I ended up, I really love the Rivian truck, the R1T that we have.
Love those.
And so I decided it was time to buy Anthony something that he has wanted for a long time. And I was trying to keep it a secret. I'm not very good at that. So he found out. And the one that I had originally picked out was not good enough for him. And I love the car. We finally got it. And it's nice to drive.
I was valeting before I was doing all the Turo stuff. And I remember the first time I got into that car. I mean, I love valeting because you get to try out all these different cars, and you get into that car and it's not like anything else. I mean, it's
the pedals
low
slippery
to the ground. Yeah, you've got that whole cockpit feel. Yeah.
And it just wants to go.
So cool. Yeah.
Like it's hard not to speed in it. I mean, it really is.
That's something I don't think a lot of people realize. They'll drive these really boring cars and they're like, why are you driving so fast? I'm like, how can you resist?
I mean, typically when I'm in a 4-cylinder trying to get on the 17, I have my foot all the way to the floor.
Yeah, I could see like some people are stressed by it, but I get into like, the Miata. I'm sure if I got into a Corvette, I'd be like, all right, let's go,
Well, I mean, the instant you hit the ignition button, the damn thing is just growling at you.
Yeah, it's just ready to go.
Yeah. And you can hear it
awesome.
pulling into the driveway even. So it definitely, the 8 cylinders.
That's good. Yeah. You want something exciting.
Yeah. I mean, I think that our Grand Wagoneer has very much the same capabilities as the Corvette when it comes to the engine size, but then it's in a much smaller vehicle, right? Smaller package. Yeah, for sure. So you just feel that a little bit more. But yeah. After this,
it is kind of mind blowing. I'm used to hearing that sound in a truck, and you get into it in a car, and you're just like, "What are you doing here?"
Yeah. Put the seatbelt on. So my guess is no, but I'm going to ask the question anyways.
Sure.
Did you write a business plan at all, or do a feasibility study? I know a lot of Turo hosts, when it comes to a feasibility study, it might not be something that's written, but a lot of folks will go on and look at current inventory of the vehicle they want to add, what the daily rates are currently for that vehicle, and then use those daily rates to figure out if it's feasible to purchase that vehicle and put it on the platform.
Yeah. So we started out with, so this is my first entrepreneurial venture. You mentioned that you started with the coffee shop. This is the first thing I've really done on my own. And I was hedging my bets where it's like, all right, the thing doesn't rent a single day. Will I go into debt for this car? And I mean, I was making enough money to afford the payment. And, you look at, a lot of it was talking to my stepdad. He kind of mentored me through this whole thing. I mean, Turo is so great because it is low risk, where if this really doesn't work out, you can just sell the car, But But yeah, I did look at, there was one other Miata in our area. I would go to the calendar, check out to see how many days they had booked. Probably my favorite thing that really won me over was, if this didn't work, nobody else would do it, which I try not to parrot that too much because that kind of sounds like a pyramid scheme. But, you know, that's the thing about business. I mean, people are doing it because it works. I mean, you didn't get to 20 cars just out of nowhere.
Yeah, you know, and the economy is like a river. You know, it's always changing. And I think that's something that, you know, sometimes it works and then sometimes it doesn't. And I think that's something we'll get into a little bit later in this episode. But one thing that you had mentioned was, if it didn't work out, you could sell the vehicle. Yeah. So that was something that I had decided after Chadwick's. And I think a lot of you have to take into consideration when you were starting a business, right? So when I started Chadwick's, I leased a space. I created a new brand. I opened a cafe grocery store. Now I'm working towards it, right? I'm making money every day, working towards what? I don't know. I really didn't know. I didn't know if it was going to be, you know, when our 3 years was up in our lease, were we going to be out? That wasn't my plan. My plan was long-term. We were going to continue to grow and evolve. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. We had, you know, decided that the 3 years was it and we were going to move out. Now, that is a business that is not easily liquidated. So once I moved out of that, I had decided that I was going to only do businesses that had a current market to liquidate. Okay. And that's why it was so appealing to me in the beginning when I started buying vehicles to list on Turo was, again, like you said, if it doesn't work out, I could drive it down to CarMax, I could drive it over to Carvana, and I could sell the car that day and be done with it. Yeah, it's very low risk. It is. You know, I can't say it is currently because the vehicle market has changed so much. And that's what I mean about the economy being a river. You know, back then, people were paying $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 over MSRP. It was a wild time. For vehicles. Yeah. I don't know where those people are. I mean, underwater. Yeah, underwater and probably not alive. Yeah. You know, like, it's been so crazy. So if you think about it, our Grand Wagoneer, for example, we got that, I think we paid $120,000 back then. Yeah. Prices have come down on those drastically. They were a new vehicle back then, and people were paying $10,000, $15,000 above that $120,000 price tag. Yeah. Because it was a Series 3 Grand Wagoneer. I was able to buy it without the markup. So I had an advantage above the people that bought with the markup. Yeah. And my rule of thumb with Turo has always been, if I paid $120,000 for the vehicle, it needs to be $120 a day rate, or it doesn't make sense. I created that formula to make the math really simple for myself. That's good. I don't get that rate with that vehicle. And so, you know, folks that paid $140, $150 with the markup. Well, you did the best you could at the time, too. I remember talking to you about your Jeeps. I was like, why does this guy have so many Jeeps? And come to find out, I ask myself that question every day now. I mean, every single car at that time had a markup, and you were buying new cars because you found a guy at Jeep that wouldn't give you a markup, or wasn't marking up the cars. I think you got like a few lease deals as well, too, which was nice. But I want to go back really quick to kind of, you talked about exiting Chadwick's. I think one thing, I feel like you get this, where if you are investing in yourself, you never lose. That was another thing for me where I was like, if I didn't make a single dime on Turo, I'd be really happy because I got to own my dream car. I got to try this out. I knew I would learn a ton. And, you know, once I saw it as like there was no way to lose, that was a pretty major thing for me. I mean, originally our plan was to liquidate the Miata, but I think I'll just run it forever and ever. It'll probably get crashed, but, you know. You do what you can there. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you just said something that I've said a lot in my life, maybe to others, but a lot to myself, in the sense that I always believed that, I could invest in the stock market and I could have this extremely slow growth. That's investing in somebody else, in somebody else's dream, in somebody else's ability. I always thought it was better to invest in myself. At least I'm in control of that and my own destiny.
I'm almost worried about my future because I don't know if I ever want to save again. Once you get a taste of like, I'll just invest into like a business or something, you're like, why would I just have my money sitting somewhere when I could be so in charge of it? I mean, make it work for you,
Yeah. I mean, I think that is what the entrepreneurial American dream is all about too. And I mean, I know I've told you this in the past. It's like I log into my online banking and I'm like, if there's any money in there, I'm like, oh my God, where'd I go wrong? That should be spent and invested somewhere.
Yeah.
Making money. That drives Anthony absolutely up the wall. Does not like that.
It's hard to get used to, especially
because inevitably that river, that's the economy.
It's gonna shift too.
Shifts. And then you're like up to your neck and you're like, ugh. But somehow we survive. And that's really the key.
And
about
it's so rewarding. Yeah,
it really is. Change is entrepreneurship. I wholeheartedly believe that. You have to continue to, evolve. You have to adapt to new environments. You have to abandon paths that you once thought were the path to the future. And my mom, God bless her, she doesn't understand that. And she really, every time I see her, she was just down here not that long ago. And every time I see her, she says, oh, you're changing your ways again. You're not doing that anymore. Now you're doing this.
Yeah, that's scary for some people. And that has been a severe limitation for us. We've had to, luckily our HOA is kind of flexible. They'll let us park in the street.
That's nice.
We also have a neighbor that lets us use his driveway. So
yeah, that is really handy.
You do what you got to do.
Yeah. So one question I had for you, looking back at those first baby steps that you were taking when you were first starting out, what hurdles did you face that you felt like were possibly going to be insurmountable starting your Turo business?
Mm-hmm. So we already talked about the steps to get into it. Once I was actually on Turo, the first one right out of the gate was just getting it to the airport. Turo didn't really have regulations for that at the time. I mean, you were told if you get caught at the airport with your car, you're blacklisted from the airport. For my first guest, I did pick them up curbside and drove them to a different parking lot, which really not supposed to do that. You're not insured for that. But then shortly after that, I found the Facebook Turo group. And that was like, wish I would have done that like a whole year ago. First thing. Other big issues were...
Before you get into that, I wanted to talk a little bit about what you had said. When you first start out on a business that has an intermediary platform, it's sometimes you do things that you shouldn't be doing, so that you get good ratings. For example, you might deliver a vehicle for free to a guest. You should be paid for that time. You should be paid for that service. There's no reason to be doing those things for free. You really need to hold your ground on those things.
Yes. And I've talked to you about this extensively, where you want to be, a business is personal and you want to do everything correctly the way you want to do it. And you find yourself giving away too much. And you have to kind of get into the right frame of mind where, in therapy, it's called like a penny sheet, or it's like,
I think I know what you're saying, and I'm going to put it in a different framework.
Yes,
because it's something that I realized through Chadwick's. It became very personal for me, and one thing that I had realized was that the best way to view your business as though it's its own entity. So yourself your employees, your team members, they are there to be stewards and guardians of that entity. The entity feeds everyone. You as a business owner, your team members' families. And so if you are not a good steward, or your employee is not a good steward of that business, the business will continue to erode, and eventually the money will follow. The money will stop trickling in as fast because your vehicles, a good example I have for Turo is, if you let cosmetic damage continue to slide from guest to guest, your asset erodes quicker and quicker. Your reviews start to reflect that, and your daily rates will eventually have to be adjusted down so that your vehicle is rented out more. Or I guess I could say that your daily rates reflect the quality of the vehicle that you have.
Yeah, it can catch up with you really quick. I think what's helped me the most is trying to make it just really cut and dry. Like for gas, I used to feel really tough about making people pay for the gas they used. And now I have it up front in all the messages like, look, if you can't afford, or if you run out of time, I'll refill the gas for you.
Mm-hmm.
And just having that understanding that you've made your expectations of them known. And that way, when you have to push back on them, you don't really have to feel guilty. I mean, there's an understanding. And I mean, that's just how I've got to look at it as a business, is like, I'm in the right place for doing it. I'm not mean. I'm not crazy. This is just an agreement,
Yeah. And I think when it comes to fuel, I've had that same disconcerting feeling about some aspects of it.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that I look at now, or I feel, is that it's energy consumption.
Mm. I'm
not responsible for your existence in the world. And you didn't need to rent a car. You could have used Uber or your God-given 2 legs. That'd be a huge pain in the butt in the sun-soaked streets of Phoenix in the summer. Right. But I'm not here to pay for your existence. I'm here to provide a service, which is a rental car.
Yes.
And that's even why, when people reach out and they're like, oh, where's the best place to eat? I kind of get irritated by that, because daily rates have fallen so low that I'm not being paid to be your travel agent. I'm being paid to rent you a vehicle that I barely am making money on.
I don't like making it too personal either, because I know when I rent a car, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this person's letting me use their car. Whereas like, I don't want there to be that tension for them when they have the car. I want them to be thinking about their trip. I don't want them to be thinking like, what if I don't bring it back? Like, it's going to have dust. It's going to be so dirty. I want them to be enjoying the trip. That's the experience I want to provide. And I don't think them getting to know me makes their trip more stress-free. Yeah. Help them focus on the good things. The good thing is the car. And I give them the best car I can give them.
Right. You hold up your end of the bargain.
Yeah.
It's maintained, safe. It's what is advertised. I think a lot of people forget, a lot of guests forget that, like, that's a big piece of it. I mean, there's a lot of times you show up as a guest, I have in the past, where the vehicle isn't what it was advertised at. It maybe had mechanical issues. And don't get me wrong, mechanical issues can happen in the middle of a trip. I mean, we're in an organic environment, right?
Yeah.
Things are going to happen. It's just the way it is. But if you are doing your best and you're trying your hardest, that's all you can do.
You do everything you can.
Yeah, for sure. You've been doing this a while.
Mm-hmm.
What is one thing that you feel you're an expert at now that you've been trucking along for 3 years, almost 4?
I like to think I've gotten better at getting the cars. I mean, I feel like it's a good way to channel a shopping addiction. It's just, you're always looking for cars. And we have a lot of great options here in Arizona where you don't pay sales tax on private party purchases. So all of our cars have been used. And I mean, once you're in like a comfortable position, You don't have to be just a lot of people, they'll buy a new car when their old one breaks. When you can afford to sit back and just get the really good stuff, I mean, that's just a great place to be in. So I feel like I've gotten a bit better at that. And I do it for everything. It's kind of fun to just look for good deals everywhere. I mean,
well, and when we started, there was no good deals to be had. I mean, it was very hard. And, I remember I sold a few vehicles before we got into Turo that were used as farm vehicles to CarMax. And I remember that night driving down there and I thought, well, if I get $8,000 out of this, I think it was like a Ford, one of the smaller transit vans, but it was a passenger transit van. Mm-hmm. I thought, well, I'd be doing good. And I go in and they came back with a number of 12,000. And Anthony looked behind us and he's like, have you seen their lot? There's 3 vehicles in a lot that was typically overswelling with inventory. Mm-hmm. It blew my mind. And that's when I realized we were in a whole different world when it came to vehicles.
Yeah. One of my favorite moments was we live out by Wild Horse Pass. And a few months before we got into Turo, or like during the pandemic, they filled every single parking lot they had out there with cars. It must have been like 20 acres or something insane. Just all the enterprise, everybody, which just puts it into perspective how crazy this operation is. How do you feel about, I mean, you've been very helpful to me as a Turo guest. I think I never realized there were so many cars on Turo. What do we have, like 6,000 cars in Phoenix?
I think it used to be higher than that. I think we were around 7,500 before CarSync was disconnected. Now that number's not shared. So it's really hard to tell. I know some of the bigger hosts continue to add vehicles. Smaller hosts like myself have continued to divest our vehicles because of some of the system and policy changes that Turo has continued to roll out over the last few months.
It is harder to be a host now, yeah.
It is a lot harder to be a host. And, I think one of the things, I think Turo is contracting and trying to push hosts out. But one of the most heartfelt issues I have about that is I've had a lot of sleepless nights. I have cared a lot about the outcome that my guests would have and the experience they would have on Turo. And me selling the vehicles now, back then, Turo used to say, you'd buy this vehicle, you maybe have a loan on it. In 5 years, you have that loan paid off. And then you'd sell the vehicle. And this is the amount of money that you would have received for doing the work.
Yeah.
When you sell vehicles midstream, unless you are in the business of buying and selling consistently, you lose that money. The promise and the dream that was advertised by Turo back then really is no more. And I have a hard time with that. I have a hard time that executives at Turo that say that they have vehicles on the platform and that they understand what we go through, they don't understand what we go through. We don't have a $500,000 salary. We don't have even a $30,000 salary to rely on. Not only that, we have put a tremendous amount of risk on our plate by taking out loans
the risk
on
is
some
really
vehicles.
Crazy.
And then they don't want to stand behind us as hosts. They don't want to, support us in the most dire situations sometimes.
I think we'll get to it a little bit later, but that is one thing I've started to strive for now is, you want to be an entrepreneur for independence. And whenever you're tied to somebody like Airbnb, Turo, Amazon, nobody's ever going to be doing everything completely solo. There's always going to be insurance agencies and taxes, all of that. But you want to be, it really sucks to be under somebody's thumb like that. And it's tough with Turo too, because they can do whatever they want. They don't really have competition. They've got traditional rental car agencies.
But you as a host couldn't go to a competitor.
Yeah, we're out of options. I mean, they just got rid of, what was it, like 1,800 of their worst cars.
Mhm.
I mean, if a car broke down on a trip within its first 5 rides, it was pretty much getting kicked off.
Yep. We
That's
had
just,
one.
yeah. Yeah, see, that's just,
That
you
is
don't want to be in a situation like that.
right. And that is when I had decided this is not for me. I'm not going to be, it's not a business. It's not a business. I don't have the tools to make my guests happy, and I don't have the tools to hold them accountable. It has eroded the quality of my fleet. It has diminished the returns on my investments, and I can put my money elsewhere. And I honestly don't think Turo cares one bit. And when I say Turo, I'm talking about leadership, because you don't hear them talking anymore. I think they're in a contraction environment. They're trying to purge hosts.
They had it too good. They really don't have to try too hard. I mean, the systems are in place. There's always going to be hosts. That's one of the tough things about Turo.
The thing is that they're purging good hosts, and not even good, great hosts. Hosts that have invested a lot of money in brand new cars. So they had brand new cars on their platform to offer their guests that had we have extremely high ratings, and they don't care. They don't care. I mean, I've tried talking to our account success manager and stuff, and it's constantly, I almost feel like I have Stockholm syndrome and that I'm a hostage. Honestly, because I get the email saying that this car that it has less than 10 trips on it is being delisted because of maintenance issues and banned forever. I'm angry. I'm upset. Not more than 8 hours after that, I get an email saying that they're finally rolling out lending and insurance product that we've been asking for the last 2 years. So it was like, slit your wrist, and then, we love you, stay. We have all these things that are coming out. Like, that's nuts.
I wish I knew what it was like in there, just to get an aspect of what the culture is. I mean, I've never worked for a massive company like that. I probably will at some point in the future. And that just makes me wonder, like, how anybody gets anything done. I mean, it just seems like nobody's running the show.
I will say this. I went to the Power Host Summit last year, and how Turo was presented to us versus what we experience on a daily basis are completely different. I don't understand how there is that much disconnect. I mean, that has to be a corporate culture. And I have a lot of experience with large organizations. I worked for Facebook at one point in time. I understand how those things operate. And I can only imagine how much disconnect and the silos that they must be operating in, because it seems like there's policies that roll out that don't connect to one another. So it's like one group made a policy and then another group made a policy, and those policies are very wishy-washy.
Yeah. It's tough too when you see a service like CarSync go down. I mean, it's not just hosts walking away from Turo. You're starting to see, well, I don't think CarSync was a good example. Who's backed out from Turo? Hasn't it? A few insurance agencies have backed out, correct?
Yeah, but those could be business decisions. Actuarial accountants go into those things and figure out, can they make money off of it or can they not? And I think Liberty Mutual at one point in time had a product for Turo hosts that they no longer offer. And I think it just became more expensive than what they realized. And Lula is another example of that.
Yeah.
Another insurance provider
that's the one.
Popped up, couldn't make a go of it, and now is gone.
Wasn't it good for a while, though? It seemed promising.
It seemed promising.
I mean, insurance is one of the tougher things for guests or hosts.
Beside all that, all of us that have owned businesses have had moments of complete despair, wanting to throw in the towel. Have you ever had a moment like that?
I'll talk about a larger issue because I really haven't had anything catastrophic happen with my Turo journey. But kind of emotionally, like I've always wanted to get more into cars. That's kind of why I got into this. And I saw it in my time as a valet, and I've seen it more in my time as a host. A lot of people just aren't going to care as much as you. I mean, I care so much. I know. But I mean, so I've got a manual sports car, and you hear about this is just a dying genre of car where it makes up probably, I don't know, 1% of US sales are manual cars. And you get some of these questions from, I have one of 50 manual cars out of the, what we say, 7,500 Turo cars in Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
So that's already such a small, I mean, it's really focused on me, that market. And I mean, none of the traditional automakers or rental companies do manual. Anyways, you get these people that should care more than anyone, and they're still on the phone with you like, I don't know how to put this car in reverse, or my cooler can't fit in the trunk. I mean, and I get some weird complaints. Every once in a while, you'll have somebody that really knows. I've had like a few Porsche experienced test teachers rent the car, and they'll be like, oh, you would love some more camber. I'm just like, all right, I care. Maybe I don't care that much. Like, but
do you, on your listing for that, do you put the trunk size?
I think so.
Because we have an Audi TT, which is very similar in the sense of it's a convertible, a very small trunk.
Yes.
And we had to finally put the size of the trunk on there because we'd been getting so many messages from people. How big's the trunk? And I'd forget how big it was, and I had to go back out and measure it. We finally just did that.
Luckily, I haven't really had that issue. If somebody adds another driver, I'll be like, look, are you sure? Because I mean, it can be a tough car for that.
Yeah.
But I mean, going back to,
so you have 3 drivers listed and there's only 2 seats.
Oh my. Somebody listed like 5 drivers. I was like, you guys sure? And I was just like, well, they're just going to destroy the car. But it was fine.
Was it? No. you seem upset.
I try to close my eyes, You definitely get over that. Just turn off the bouncy app and
my
your
gosh.
GPS trackers. You gotta. So, man, that's a odd way to come back around to the question. You want to care, but you don't want to care about some things. I mean, so I care so much about this car. The listing is crazy. I took the car all over the state, getting pictures of the car on various mountains, some of the best roads in the state. And then you get these people where like, they just don't care. And you're like, I don't know. It just feels lonely, I guess. And you're like, where can I go to just be surrounded by this energy that I want to be a part of? I think you've done that really well, where I feel like you're always moving towards your next curiosity, where, I don't know.
You know what that did to the cat?
Yeah. Well, that's what's, it's been so great to experience these cars, and I was so interested in them for the longest time. But then you do this for a few years and you're just kind of disenfranchised, where you're like, I'm spending so many thousands of dollars a month on cars. And it's like, you get onto the I-10 and you're just in bumper to bumper traffic for like 20 minutes a day. I'm just like, there's got to be a better way than this. I mean,
yeah, no, right there with you. I felt that time and time again. And then I'm wondering, what am I doing here? And I think, that's part of the reason why I started this podcast. Was it feels so lonely to own your own business sometimes, that you're on this raft. And sometimes when you have team members and employees or staff, it can be even more alienating. You think you have more people in your life, but there are people that they don't get what you're you're going through.
Yeah.
And now they want something or they need something from you consistently, whether it's direction or more money or any of those things. And it can be very alienating. And I feel like sometimes in those moments of despair, I just am floating on this raft out there in the middle of nowhere and no one can understand me. And, usually I don't have any good things said about me when it comes to, when guests interact. We have really good reviews on Turo, but
if everything goes right, there's really no story to tell.
Right.
I'll have trips where I don't send a single message. I mean, I'll send one message, which is just like, okay, here's the car. This is the location.
Yeah.
But I mean, but you've done it really well where you continue to satiate your curiosity. Like, it feels kind of tough that I've put all of this work into one listing and you're just like, half of this didn't work. What the heck? But then to go on to the next one and you've refined the process. Now you've got all the important stuff. And that gives you more energy. You can put your energy into different places once you've started to figure that stuff out. Where it's like, I feel like people that aren't entrepreneurs, a lot of times you'll just hear them like, oh, I'm going to get an Airbnb. And they'll say that for like 10 years, even longer. Who knows? They could say it forever and just never do it. But I mean, as an entrepreneur, I think it's really important that you work to always be figuring out what you want to do. Like, there was a time where I would journal every day. And the idea is just to get something out of your head so you can move on. I mean, if something really sticks, you'll just write it every day and then you'll come around to getting it. I mean, if you're talking about it every day, you're eventually going to do it. But I mean, and I think that's part of the creative process of owning a business is something sticks to your mind and you've got to see it through, or else you're just never you're going to be stuck.
Yeah, I think journaling would have been a cheaper option for me. I have a problem that when I have something in my head, I have to do it. I got to get it out.
Yeah, shoot first, aim later.
Yeah. But I mean, there's some things that like we're working on this super secret project that I shared with you a little bit ago.
It's exciting.
But we're really planning on this piece, right? So we're doing some design work and trying to build out a business plan because this project's going to take a lot of money and it's going to be a lot of fun. But and it may not come to fruition. We talked about that. I could all of a sudden find a motel because I've been wanting to find a small motel or something and redo that. I could find that and I could put my energy into that. And this next large project may never come to fruition, but I don't want to give up the hope, of that. And I would love to make sure that I at least have the business plan there and ready to go. So I'm the worst fisherman because I'd have like 6 poles in the water trying to figure out which bait is actually going to work to catch the fish. But
you're going to find the right bait faster. I mean,
I hope. I don't know. Sometimes I think, and then sometimes I think about that too, and I'm like, well, you're doing 5 different things, and you're just okay at 5 of them. You're not great at any of them, but there are some things that I'm great at, and now I'm trying to replicate what I'm great at. And I think that's the key is honing down. If you're like me and you do throw a lot of lines in the water, start consolidating, hone down the ones that you're really good at, they have passion for, and focus on those. Well,
that's the thing. You're getting to figure those things out. A lot of people that never take the leap, they're never going to figure those things out.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Taking the leap is one of the most difficult things.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a short break. One of our lights went out. It's been a day, but we'll be right back. And we're going to jump into the topic of the day, kind of fast-paced questions about Turo. And meet you right back here. All right, and we're back.
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I really want to thank Landon for joining me today and all of you for tuning in and watching this episode. Uh, one thing that for me is not always easy is the morality of sharing stories that involve others, even businesses such as Turo. But what I have decided with this format and everything else going forward is that, it's my story and everyone else is writing their own part in my story. And so the moral of the story of that is if you want to be seen and talked about in a good light as a good person or a good business, be a good business, be a good person, write your own story. And, I think that's all we can do. We can only be the best. I haven't always been the best character in other people's stories, but I've learned over time, and I've tried to have relationships that are symbiotic, that really help both of us mutually. And I think we've had, that type of interaction. You've helped me out with cars when I was on vacation or whatnot. And that's kind of how our relationship started. And, I hope I've helped you in some way.
You've been great. Yeah, I've bought cars because of you. I
mean, I tried to get you to buy a Kia Forte that I was selling at one point. That was a cash cow for us.
I really should have done it. Probably would have been my best car.
And I remember asking you, are you in this to make money or not? And you said, I'm in it because I like cars. And yes. You just didn't like Kias.
Not at the time.
So we're going to jump into the big topic of the day, which is Turo as a business. We've talked a lot about Turo in this episode, but there's a few more things that are very poignant that I think we can talk about. So Turo as a business.
Yes.
So how's your business going?
My business is keeping me happy. I'm able to try out all these different cars that I want. I do live at home with my mom right now, and my brother and sister have been going to college. What's nice with Turo is, while they're home over the summer, our cars aren't really getting used a whole lot. So everybody's able to have a car for that. I mean, I'm able to try out entrepreneurship. And, as far as money goes, I feel like that's the number one thing you get asked with Turo. And there's never a straightforward answer because you can lose money. You can lose a ton of money. But I mean, I'm a student right now. I've got enough money from this to pay for the car payments, and I get a little bit of spending money. It does what I need it to for money. I mean, could I get a bunch more? I'm definitely leaving some money on the table. But I mean, I'm doing what works for me. You talk about doing the best that you can. I've maxed out my credit on cars. And, as much as I'd love to do Turo as a full-time gig, that's just...
Let me ask you this, because you said that.
Yes.
If you didn't live with your parents,
mm-hmm.
Could you, and you had no other job or source of income, could you do Turo all by itself?
No. I mean, not here. Probably not anywhere. Turo works here because I live close to the airport. I mean, and this is a vacation destination. I mean, Phoenix from, October to March, it's just one of the top destinations in the country because everywhere else it's snowing.
Right.
It's gray. It's miserable. But I mean, it works here because this is such a desirable place. And yeah, I do need help from my parents to stay afloat at the moment.
But you're also a student. So
I am a student.
I mean, that's something that's fair. I mean,
yeah, I'd like to talk about it at some point. I mean, I don't think I would have the confidence to go back to school if I hadn't been successful in Turo. I mean, I had originally failed out of school when I was 20. And, I just spent a lot of time I mean, I wanted to be an accountant, but I spent my entire time just like looking at cars, playing video games, reading articles and stuff. And then, I never really knew where to channel that. And I mean, the confidence I got from Turo, I met you, I talked to hosts like yourself, and I did manage to make money. I didn't go underwater. The worst fears never came true. I mean, I'm a lot more confident in what I want to do after this. I mean, that's pretty valuable in itself. I mean, my grandpa always taught me that, sometimes you pay for an education. And Turo is definitely one of those things where maybe I've put in a little more work than I needed to. But I mean, that's come back to me in other non-financial ways.
Yeah. I mean, I think about, when I was a freshman in college at the University of Iowa, entering the market in any type of business segment back then, it took a lot of overhead.
Yeah.
It was not easy to get in or out.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, it was brick and mortar. The internet was something new when it came to shopping.
Yeah.
If you were to go back and look at Amazon's website back then, you wouldn't buy anything off of it because it just didn't look trustworthy.
Mm.
Completely different today.
Yeah. And, one of the things too with Turo, so it was just free money back in when we first started 2021, because all of the rental agencies had no cars.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're starting to see it really oversaturated, because I've said it multiple times now, it's a really low risk way to try out owning a business. And because anybody can do it, everybody does it. Right. It's so hard to make money now. And you're going to see that to some degree in every industry. But what I hope to do by going back to school is get a skill set where it's going to be more valuable. And one thing you'll see, I'm going to Scottsdale Community College right now. They've had a few, I'll have to send you the name, but they've had a few EV panels where they've brought in business owners from around the city who work in EVs.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my God, the businesses these people have built, it's brilliant. With Tesla specifically, when they first came out in 2018, the Model 3, all warranty work took care of any maintenance for the car for the first 3 years. So this guy, he had the ability to just be like, okay, in 3 years, they're going to need a better version of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to be able to get myself into a position where it is going to be a more rare skill set. And I think EVs are a great place to do that, because it's still growing rapidly. And I've seen it now as I have a Tesla and it's a nightmare. Okay. There's nowhere near enough infrastructure to our car, the door got hit, just the door. It took 3 months to get an appointment.
Mm-hmm.
$7,000 repair somehow, a door.
Yeah, that's the part about value engineering in manufacturing, is that the value engineering is the value of the manufacturer.
Yeah.
Not of the end user, which is almost insane to a degree that the repair, let's not even just say maintenance and upkeep, but
mm-hmm.
repair can be so expensive because of the way that the engineers have designed this car to snap together like a Lego.
Yeah.
Just blows my mind.
EVs, it's so different too. You need all these different certifications. We're just nowhere near where we need to be. And in the future, there's going to be a lot of opportunity there. I hope to find something in my studies that will get me a solid position. And hopefully I'll have quite a bit of equity after all this Turo stuff. That's the other thing. You said it earlier. You make a lot of the money after you sell the car, ideally. While a lot of people just make payments.
Mm-hmm.
But
you can't live off that. That's
no, you can't.
That's the point we go back to, that if you didn't live with your parents, you wouldn't.
It's really hard to make this work as an individual thing.
Yeah. And I don't know. I do not understand what path Turo is taking. I think they have an identity crisis at the moment. They got rid of corporate accounts. It seems like they were heading more towards, they wanted folks that had maybe one or two cars that they personally owned, listing them on there, trying to get rid of the big fleets. And now they've published a bunch of policies that make it impossible for those people even to exist. If you had 3 cars on Turo Go, which used to put the burden on the guest, so they would have to take photos, the car would automatically unlock from the app. Now the burden's back on you. And so if you have to be at working and you can't get the car down there out, within 24 hours, you're not going to make it. Your photos are going to be too old. You're not going to have a protection plan. The risk just is so drastically increased that it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's a lot harder.
Yeah. So I don't understand that piece. And I've tried to wrap my head around it, and I can't.
I think they just need some competition. I mean, the bar is so low because they're the only ones that do it. I mean, what would you do if you didn't have Turo? I mean, well, I see what you do. You've started to transition to like campers and stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Turo used to not be profitable. It is now because they're taking money
out of a ton of money, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, they're finally making money, but they're making it on the backs of us. And that's what I think bothers me the most. And they've done nothing to create an environment ecosystem that saves us money on car insurance, or saves us money on parking, or saves us money on tires or windshields. I mean, every business relationship that they've created has been to the benefit of Turo. And that has been a struggle with.
Yeah. And it's sad because they don't have to do better. There's always going to be more hosts. I mean, that was what I thought I would see more of when I started doing this, was people that are underwater on their payment and they're just desperate to make money on the car again. But
we were in a different time back then.
Yeah. Well, I think that was just a flat wrong assumption. Pretty much every post I see, they're doing this as a business.
Right. Yeah. And it's a numbers game. I mean, the larger you are at small margins, the larger you are, the more money you're able to actually make.
Yes.
Speaking of struggles, what are your top 3 struggles with Turo right now?
Well, it's probably going to be time soon. I mean, at one point we had 7 cars, and I was able to do that with my brother while I was at school, or, come home from school, do my 3 cars, do that, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I don't have enough credit to keep expanding. It's not making that much more money. Honestly, my guests have been pretty good. I know we like to talk about how bad our guests can be, but, the Miata renters, they're always pretty cool.
The majority, it's the 80-20 rule. 20% of your guests are going to make 80% of your problems, but 80% of your guests are fantastic guests.
Yeah.
And I think that's been evident and true for us. But that 20% can make it extremely hard to see the 80% fantastic folks.
Yeah. Or, you talk about what keeps you up at night. I really don't like looking over my shoulder for unknown expenses. I mean, with the manual cars, everybody's first response to that is, oh, some kid's going to learn how to drive stick on your car and they're going to destroy it, which I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I think cars are a lot more durable than most people realize. But even if the manual is treated perfectly, things just go wrong with cars. We had an air conditioner go out on our Mazda 3 at like 40,000 miles. If a Tesla windshield breaks, that's like 1,200. I mean, our car just went out of the battery warranty. That's a really tough decision for us to make, where it's, do we keep running it and risk having to pay $13,000 if the battery goes bad? That's going to keep you up at night.
That could be a whole different episode and conversation in of itself. I really have thought about that a lot.
I mean, or with the Miata soft top too?
I'll give you let me, with those Tesla batteries, let me give you some data points. We have had
I know where this is going.
Teslas on the platform. And this goes back to Turo as well. So 6 Teslas on the platform. We've replaced 4 of the high volume battery packs under 30,000 miles.
Yeah. So you talk to a guy like Chad with an experience like that, and it's just like, I've got to get rid of it right now.
And how, that's not sustainable. It doesn't make any sense financially. And this is where I say it's a Turo problem, and why I will say Turo is not a business, because you cannot hold your guests accountable. Turo makes it impossible because they're the ones that set the rules. And when I have a guest that's constantly, we just had this happen, runs the vehicle down to 0% and then needs to have it towed to a supercharger and charges that vehicle up, that one instant might not destroy that battery pack. But I guarantee you, when it happens time and time and time again, it is what causes the majority of these problems.
I mean, sometimes they don't even tell you.
Most of the times not. But I find it. I see it. You just log into the app and all of a sudden you see that it's at 0%. Or you get a notification
in a different place. Yeah.
And so I struggle with that because I feel like, again, it's something that Turo does not have my back on. There's no way to hold the guest accountable for running it to 0. They want a diagnostic done to show that it damaged the battery.
Yeah. It's
not the damage it did today. It's the damage it has done that's going to rear its ugly head tomorrow.
And I could see this being a major issue for a lot of, I don't want to say regular, I don't know, people that aren't as great as me. I'm trying to be an engineer, and I talk to people about their cars and they just don't understand what's going on. I mean, most of our car parts break on schedule. Like you Google how long does blank last, and that's usually when it's breaking for us. But then you have, like with EVs, it's so unproven where nobody really knows how long the battery's supposed to last. You talk to Elon, he's like 300,000 miles, no problem.
Yeah. And then you talk to Chad, like 500,000.
Yeah. You talk to Chad and he's like, 4 of them have died at 40,000 miles. And I don't think a lot of people have the stomach to just be like, their car comes back and the air conditioner's not working. And they're just like, that guest ruined my car. And it helps. I'm so interested in cars that I'll try to understand mechanically what's going on. And that helps me sleep at night. That's really important for the manual stuff where it's like, I've actually got some data for this, so I'll shoot it out. The Miata has 95,000 miles. We've had it on Turo since 30,000 miles. It has the weakest M1 transmission, famous for destroying itself.
I think Corvettes are in that same category.
Oh, no.
We have a mutual friend that's also a Turo host. His name's Tyler. And Tyler has told me that they found metal flakes in transmission fluid in most of his C8s.
Oh, that's such a shame.
Sorry, you didn't mean to cut you off. It just, that reminded me of that conversation I've had with him.
He's a big Miata guy, too.
You used to call him the Miata King. And but I think he's sold.
Yeah, he's getting rid of his Miatas. But yeah, we had our car. I mean, we had the transmission fluid changed recently, and there were no metal flakes in it. And we've had an oil analysis done after we accidentally let the car go 15,000 miles without an oil change.
He's going to be some engineer.
Yeah. Well, this is how you learn. Anyways, we sent that to Blackstone Labs, and it came back, and they're like, your oil looks great. Why don't you try for 18,000 miles next time?
I saw that email you sent me.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of people, if you don't know what's going on with a car, it's really easy to get caught up in that in that witch hunt of like, these cars, they're out to get me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's not healthy. It's no way to live. And that's where I'm at with a few of my cars. We've also got a manual BRZ. And, I'm on these online forums and a guy's like, my engine blew up at 40,000 miles. I was like, how long should I keep this car?
Yeah.
And there's just, it's not a finite system.
For sure. Obviously folks don't start businesses, work for free. Is your business profitable?
Yes.
$1, Bob.
Some of them are really profitable and others it's like, so for the Tesla right now, we're kind of taking a wash on that where it's a bit underwater on the loan. And like I said, it had that repair issue where it was down for 3 months. It had another one recently where, it just took forever to fix. And the equity in the car went down. So we lost,
It's a strange market for EVs in general right now, I think.
Yeah.
But
here's the other
we already
thing.
kind of talked about this question though, too, I think in segments, right?
Yeah.
Like the only reason that it's profitable at the end of the day, it's usually a break-even situation.
Mm-hmm.
If you have another business that makes large sums of money, a Turo fleet can help you through depreciation to offset some of your tax liability.
Yes. It's great for that.
But is it profitable on a day-to-day basis? I think the answer is no for the majority of us.
Mm-hmm.
We constantly struggle.
Well, how much of it too is sometimes it feels like you've closed the cabinet door. All of the things inside of the cabinet have fallen, but they haven't fallen unless you open the door, Like we just put all this money into this car. Maybe it'll go for so much longer, but
Yeah. That brings me to my second kind of topic is some of the things that I have struggled with as a Turo host. And I used to remember our insurance premiums were like $20,000 a year for like 10 vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, there's products out there that are for this market, yada, 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 yada.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't cover personal use. They don't cover X amount of miles. Like there's a lot of limitations on it.
Right.
But those items those products are out there now when it comes to insurance.
Yes.
Another one that I think both of us have struggled with is financing.
Yeah.
Nobody wants this stuff in our personal names, but that's how businesses start.
Yeah. And it's tough with Turo because who are some of the big, it's like some people won't finance you until you have 10 cars. Or I know that's how it is with some of the commercial ones.
And then, they push products like track leases and things like that. So you really got to research when you're going down this path of financing your Turo business, if you're getting into this, what the best option really is for you. And sometimes there is no option for you unless you have 3 plus cars. Because I think the new product that they just rolled out through a credit union is you have to have 3 or 4 cars before they even will consider you for an applicant.
Yes. And sorry, go on.
Parking. Luckily, you have a solution.
Yeah.
We used to do that here at our farm, but God, I was crabby. There is nothing that will irritate you.
You gotta just be driving for 6 hours a day at some point.
Nothing will irritate you or piss you off more than driving in Phoenix traffic for 6 hours a day, going back and forth between here and the airport.
I think the sweet spot is about 5 cars because I believe that's the tax limit where you can still do standard mileage deduction. And there's a massive opportunity there since we don't pay for gas, but that still goes into the 60 cents a mile deduction. So yeah, keeping it under 5 cars is easy for the taxes. It's easy for
one person to manage. You don't have to hire somebody.
Once you get above 5, it's a lot harder. And it's a lot harder to get financing. A lot of people will kind of cheese the financing and just, buy 3 cars in one day before the credit updates.
Which is against the application and contract that you sign when you do that. So we don't We don't condone
It's not a good
that.
idea. And there's a good chance you're getting in over your head if you do something like that too. I mean,
Especially
there's a reason
now.
that exists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So financing, I think is a big struggle with our products out there now that are Turo focused, which is a benefit that didn't exist when we started.
Yeah, it used to be really tough. And, you try to look around for answers. At a lot of insurance companies, you would find somebody to say, yeah, I guess. And other times they just say no. I mean, it's really easy to say no to something like Turo because it is in a gray area. There's all these systems set up for rental cars and very few for car sharing.
Yeah, for sure. Glass was another struggle for us. I assume it probably was for you too.
I've gotten so good at filling my own cracks. There must be 5 cracks in the Miata windshield right now.
That are all filled.
That's right.
If you're doing this, you got to learn how to fix cars. You have to learn how to think on the fly. You have to have extremely good critical thinking skills. When it comes to repairs and glass filling is fairly easy. But I will always suggest find a local small guy that runs his own glass shop and create really good rapport with him. Make sure he understands your needs, right? They have to understand that this is a rental vehicle. When I message that there's something that needs to be replaced, it has to be done fairly fast for turnaround's sake.
Yeah. And to find these guys, I mentioned that I wish I had gotten onto the Facebook group earlier. There's support systems for this type of thing in every city. So reach out to people in your area and that'll be great. And then
what about in Las Vegas? What's the support system up there like? I heard you had some experience.
Did I? Oh, yeah.
Dead battery
in a parking garage. Yeah. You learn the Turo roadside assistance. Well, I really don't know what they're doing, but it's not working. So I had to pay for my own roadside guy, just some random tow truck after 4 hours of Turo roadside failing to appear. Yeah, managing a car, trying to fix a car from what is that, like 600 miles away? That's a real fun one.
And this is an issue that I have. If you were contractually obligated to do something for Turo and you failed to do it, they would charge you a fee.
Mm-hmm.
When Turo fails to do it, it's just nothing. Yeah. And that's my struggle. And actually is my next question. Turo as a service provider. How are they?
You know what? I want to go back to the repairs really quick because I've put in quite a bit of time to this one. If you're trying to get your car repaired, don't be afraid to buy the parts and take it to a shop yourself. Mm-hmm. That saves us like 50% on parts minimum.
And find a local guy again.
Yeah. I mean, ask around to your neighbors. We found a guy to replace our Miata's clutch the first time we did it through a local shop, it was $2,000. The second time we found this guy who does it at his house, and we paid $500 for parts instead of $1,000, and he charged $500 for labor.
There's some mobile mechanics too.
Yeah. And do stuff yourself. Brakes I don't think I've ever paid more than $150 for brakes.
Yeah.
Because, do the parts, you do it yourself. It's kind of like Legos.
Yep. Just make sure you torque stuff down to specs.
That's a good call. Yeah. Torque wrench is like $10, guys. You don't got to just give it as much as you got.
Yeah.
There's a way.
You don't want things coming loose, especially when it comes to stuff like that.
Sorry. Yeah. Back to your other question.
Turo as a service provider.
Turo as a service provider is, I don't know where they are. I mean, they could be 1,000 miles away. I guess they pick up the phone when I call. Do
you feel like it's, before I was talking about how I only do business when it's a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the relationship that you have with Turo is symbiotic?
I definitely would not be able to do this on my own. Turo does provide a valuable service of marketing. They have a platform. They do take care of all of the financial processing.
But they also make money off of the financial processing.
They do make a lot of money off of this. And that's the sort of, it works for somebody like me who has 5 cars. They're doing it from home. But you've got to be willing to, there's going to be expenses in every business. That was really hard for me to get used to, is the idea of like, I have to invest whatever, $5,000 immediately.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. Or like you talk about when a windshield goes down, you're like $1,000.
And it takes out all of the earnings.
Yeah. It's really easy to focus on negatives. Car. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what really kicks me sometimes.
Yeah. The Tesla, when something goes wrong, you've got to have the right mindset for that.
And then the guest has the premium protection package for themselves, which then I cannot claim anything against the guest. So they don't have to pay anything. So I'm holding the bag for a $1,000 windshield because I'm on the 90 plan, which my deductible is $2,500. So I have struggled with that.
Yeah, it's an imbalanced equation. I've been okay with it because I just accept that there's going to be a large amount of efficiency in just about everything. I mean, you're going to make a lot of mistakes, and a lot of mistakes you're not making because Turo is doing all this work for you. But once you start to scale, and the longer you do this, the more frustrating it becomes, especially because, I've grown at whatever speed. Turo is not keeping pace. I mean, we do. What have we called it in the past? They have like a startup mindset, even though they're 13 years old.
Yeah.
Where you just see them building this straw house. And it's never been easier for somebody to do something like that. They build an app and they just say, go get them to everyone in all 50 US states.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you look at like Hertz, how many stores do you think they have around the country? It's got to be close to 1,000, or like, I don't even know. I mean, it's got to be insane.
Yeah. And I think too that I think Turo leadership had this mindset at one point in time that they've allowed to get away from them, that when you have such a large business, you have to have core values and your core business, right?
Yeah.
And then it was like, well, we need to listen to our customers, and hosts are a customer. Mm-hmm. And so they started listening to the hosts, and they started listening to the guests. And then they tried to build out more and build out more and do more and offer more and create more policies because of this one unique scenario. Mm-hmm. Build another policy for another one unique scenario. And it's gotten so messy that they're no longer good at their core business.
Yeah.
I mean, I almost feel like, well, you probably are too young, but there used to be this show on Nickelodeon called I think it was called The Hidden Temple.
No way. Legends of the
Hidden Temple.
Right in my zone there.
I feel like that is what this has become.
Just running through a maze.
Running through a maze, avoiding booby traps.
There are plenty.
Right?
That's the one thing you'll hear.
Have you read the terms of service? Have you read the terms of service? People say that all the time. And then, do you know how often they change the terms of service and never notify you? On a daily basis.
It's pretty crazy.
And it irritates the living bejesus out of me.
Yeah.
And it could be one sentence in there that changes, that the responsibility was on Turo and now it's on you. They say nothing.
It's tough too, because no matter how well you follow the terms of service, you're still going to miss stuff. I mean, my car got damaged. Somebody broke a $200 hubcap and I didn't realize it for 4 days. Mm-hmm. I can't go get that money back. Nope. I've got to go through my car with a fine tooth comb within 24 hours, or I'm just... And
if you think about it as a business, Enterprise would have charged that guest after 4 days.
Yeah. And recently, our gas cap on the Mazda 3, I'm like, man, well, it's just not getting clean. I go to refill it, and somebody glued it back onto the door and like painted the glue black.
So you didn't notice it.
Yeah. I mean, you're just going to, you have to have an understanding. Like, I worked at McDonald's. They let us steal nuggets. I was like, how is this not collapsing the business that we're stealing all these nuggets? But they account for that. They have a margin of error. They'll just order an extra bag. And you've got to do that as a host. And you're just not going to stay sane if you expect things to go perfectly.
Well, and this is where I feel like there needs to be a trust score with hosts, that there are certain aspects of hosting that are rated by other people, like guests. Mm-hmm. And I think if you have a trust score of X amount, there's a certain set of rules for you. And if your trust score falls, then there's another set of rules. Like if a guest comes back, good example is I had a guest that had our Model X.
Yeah.
And there are guests out there that will try to extort money out of you. And he said, the Falcon door isn't opening up all the way. This is really starting to be an inconvenience. That's what he said.
Uh-huh.
He said, and then he wanted money back. And I said, no. And then he said it needed an alignment. I said, no, it didn't need alignment when it went out. We would have noticed that. And I said, if you look at the pre-trip photos, you'll see that both of those Falcon doors are fully open.
Mm-hmm.
I said, if you don't like the vehicle, you can return it and you get refunded, whatever the remaining days are.
Mm-hmm.
Never returned it. Returned it at the end of the trip, continuing to try to extort money from me. And this is what irritates me about Turo, is if you think about that whole concept of the guest saying that the vehicle was broken in their possession. And I told my team member, I said, if it needs an alignment and the Falcon door is not working, those two things were caused by the guest.
Mm-hmm.
Because all the photo evidence that we had and our experience was contrary to what the guest was saying.
Yeah.
But if I were to call into Turo, they're not going to believe me. They're going to believe the guest, and the guest is going to get 100% refunded.
Yeah.
That's insane. If I had a trust score based off of feedback from other reputable guests,
mm-hmm.
then Turo should say,
if only there were more money in it, That's the thing. They don't have incentive to do. They don't have enough competition, because somebody else could come along and do that. It wouldn't be hard. I mean, I think about it all the time where I'm like, if I cancel this trip, will I ever get another trip again? Because I'm going to fall so far in the search rankings. And now you're starting to fear it more after you had your car Phantom removed out of nowhere. I mean,
the new policy with cancellation.
And this is the sort of risk you take when you're a part of a system like this.
Right. Right. So it's not symbiotic.
It's symbiotic, isn't it? I'm still doing it. What am I saying?
No, because it's Stockholm syndrome.
The cars are just so cool.
I know. And that's why we do it. We can continue to do it. So last question.
Sure.
Where do you go from here? Goals, aspirations?
Well, I'm currently in school to be a mechanical engineer. I would like to use my, what would you call it, parallel knowledge, or I don't know. I've learned a lot about cars through this process. I've learned a lot about entrepreneurship. I'm hoping to take that to the next level and just do whatever continues to interest me. I mean, I'm probably going to get more cars soon. I mean, I still love what's out there. I'm learning a lot more every day, But, once I get a real job, I don't know about Turo. I like to think that in the future, I'll know better and then I'll do better.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. We're in a season of change with our Turo fleet. We made an investment with some of these that we can't get out of at the moment, or I'd be done. I hate that this episode was really focused on the negativity around Turo, but I really want our guest listeners to understand, again, that this is a moving, flowing river that is the economy. Mm-hmm. And Turo is very much part of the economy, and the economy is changing. They are changing to adapt to it. And, I've gotten to the point where I think it's time for me to exit. It's going to take some time to exit, but that's where we are at with our Turo business, our Turo fleet. But
I mean, we've ridden the wave pretty well. I think it's important too to understand all businesses get saturated. We got in while this was a more valuable business to have.
Yeah.
Now it's a little bit less. That's the way things work.
Yep.
But
well,
it's still a pretty risk-free way to get started. I mean, if you're trying to do something entrepreneurial, I mean,
yeah, if you go into
how could you do better than this?
Paying cash for an economy car, listing the car, having the commercial insurance, making sure that your car is in your business name, registered in your business name, like those things, you can separate yourself from the risk quite a bit. The way it used to be when we first started, it was in your personal name. You probably financed it. There a lot of personal risk went into it. So I think that's probably the best advice I can give when it comes to Turo is start small, start with cash, separate yourself from the risk, and just hustle your bustle.
Love it. Invest in yourself.
Invest in yourself. Well, that is all we got for today.
This was great. Thank you for having me, Chad.
No, Landon, thank you. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to, growing our business relationship and friendship for hopefully years to come.
Absolutely.
And just like that, this episode of the Every Turn podcast is complete. I'd like to thank my guest for visiting with me on this episode and to you, our listeners. Let's meet back here next week and discover the next turn. If you enjoy our content, please subscribe to our channel on your favorite podcast provider. Until next time, I'm Chad Chase.